some people. Okay. So welcome to Seeds of Agile Coaching. We name our community like this because we want with every meetup to plant some seeds that hopefully will grow into something beautiful. And and as well, we want to grow together and to learn together and to learn from each other. Our focus is on Scrum Masters and Agile coaches, on how we show up, how we behave, what is our attitude, what is it that we do and how we're doing. And as well, focused on creating effective working relationship that leads to sustainable change. A change that can last long after we leave companies, teams, and so on. I invite you to follow us on LinkedIn and on Meetup. We publish our events there, and we're committed to bring an event each month. So stay tuned for future events. The guest that we have today is actually a good friend of mine. We know from a couple of years back. I think we met on a training program. And I have to say that I've learned from Mark as much as I learned from the trainer of the program. And we stayed good friends after that. So I'm excited to have you here, Mark. Welcome. Thanks for accepting our invite here.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I definitely want to endorse Seeds of Agile Coaching. Amalia and Janut have just started this up this year. And yeah, I'm working on your name. I'm doing the best I can, so I can get better, I'm sure. But they have had amazing speakers so far. They have had book authors. They've had Jürgen Appello, they've had Cherie Silas and Alex Kudnoff, who are master coaches. They've had certified enterprise coaches like Lucia Baldelli. They've had Bart, who's a book author of OKR. So they've had an amazing lineup. So I'm actually honored to be here with you today and follow up those amazing speakers.
We are honored to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well,
maybe
yeah,
for people that don't know you, maybe you can say a few words about your background.
Yeah, so I actually have a deck that I'll show, and it'll have my name on it, and I'll talk a little bit about myself, although there's a ton of people that I do know too. So let me dive into that stuff. I'll start sharing my screen. Amalia, just in terms of logistics, when I'm starting to share myself, I'm likely going to dig into the rest of the content. On the link you shared, that's where you want people to list questions, right? So do you want to say any more about that and logistics before we get started? Okay.
Yeah. So if you have, if during the talk you'll have some questions for Mark, as well, you can scan the QR code, or you can go to slido.com and enter the code. But as well, I will share the link in the chat so you can have it as well.
Yeah, and Amalia and Janut, y'all will be monitoring that, and just let me know. And if something comes up that you want to draw my attention to, then just do it. You can do it in the moment. It's fine, and we can kind of adjust along the way. I'm pretty flexible when it comes to these talks.
Thank you so much. And I want to add on that who cannot use Slido for any reason, chat in Zoom is also good.
Yeah.
Let me, okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So let me share my screen and I'll introduce myself properly. So a second. Share. Okay, let me do this the right way and put it into slideshow mode here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, awesome. So this is not the first time giving this talk. I've actually given this talk at Agile Austin back in February of 2021. Along the way, you know, I continue to do this type of work. So I am a professional coach, an OKR practitioner, a trainer, although probably a lot less of the training and a lot more of the coaching these days, because that's what I really enjoy. I feel like in order to make a real difference, you've got to dig in and meet people where they are and actually connect and do the hard work, really roll up your sleeves. So, you know, what I'm about is helping people think, right? And believing that people and groups of people are creative, resourceful, and whole. That's such a huge part of coaching, is believing in the people that you work with. We're not here to fix anybody. We're here to help people become the best versions of themselves and to accomplish goals. And when it comes to work, it's all about helping them. I mean, we spend a lot of our times at work. We basically have work families. Let's make that experience great. Let's have a purpose. Let's connect with that purpose, and let's be awesome. In terms of where I'm at, so I'm in Austin, Texas, in the United States. I'd love to get over to Europe. I actually got accepted for a talk in Prague later this year, and I'm trying to figure out that, you know, if that's a good move for me or if that's a dangerous place to go that time of year. So we'll figure that out later. In terms of my credentials, so I'm a Scrum Alliance certified team coach. I'm working towards the enterprise coach one, but I'm kind of taking my sweet time on it. I am credentialed as a certified coach, so through the International Coaching Federation, ICF. So I've got my PCC, and I'm ORSC trained, which is systems coaching. And we'll talk more about what systems coaching is in this presentation. But like Amalia said, we're friends, and I value that friendship and relationship, and I'm so honored to be here today. So without further ado, let's kind of dig in. So what today looks like is, because all of you might be in different places with these topics, I have to at least sort of address the common denominator and make sure that we're clear on what OKRs are and what coaching is. So I have a little bit of a primer on these two things to make sure that we align with those terms. Then we're going to hit sort of different areas in which coaching might be applicable with OKRs. One of them would be generating objectives, like how do you come up with these in the first place? Another one will be around authoring an OKR. What does a good OKR look like? How do you help somebody create one that's of quality and that's useful, where they're not just checking the box? And then we'll kind of hit, well, great. Once we create an OKR, now what do we do with it? Because you'll see lots of people that just kind of set and forget it. They comply with the need to have an OKR, but they're not really building habits around it. So we'll hit a little bit of that, and then we'll kind of close with some parting thoughts. And then along the way, put questions you got in Slido and or in chat, and Amalia and Janut will help with that. And just let me know. I'm happy to wait till the end or take things along the way if there's a certain slide that appeals to you that you want to talk more about. You can also slow me down or speed me up, but you got to tell the moderators. Okay, so OKRs. Presumably these are wildly popular, and that might be some of why you're here. Like you're either working on them now and you're like, well, we're doing okay, but we can do better. Maybe that's where you're at, but we'll figure this out together. So a little bit of background. I'm not going to bore you with history, but look, this stuff's been going on for a while. I like to call out maybe certain events in time just that I think are maybe significant. So I failed to do one though. So management by objective is probably, if you could push that off to the left, that came by Peter Drucker. And this notion of management by objectives was really to provide a goal focused, but a lot of it was top down, and that had some problems associated with it. Andy Grove worked at Intel. He basically coined the term OKRs, and he had a lot of success at Intel. This was in the 1970s. I was alive. Some of you may have been, some of you may have not. So this may be like ancient history to you. But John Dewar, who's the guy that gets credit for popularizing OKRs, learned from Andy at his time at Intel. Later, so fast forward another 24 years, there was this crazy dot-com boom that happened in Silicon Valley in the US, out in California, Northern California. And we had all these new startups that got money, and it was super exciting, except most of the startups failed and all the money was lost. And so from this came this notion that, you know, we should probably be focused on what we're trying to achieve and test that we're accomplishing that, and not just give a bag of money to some people that seem like they have a good, exciting new idea. So during that time, John Doerr worked with Google. He was an investor in Google, and he helped Google have a ton of success. And if you go out and look, if you Google Google and OKRs, you'll find their site, and they have a lot of literature out there on this. So John later published a book in 2017. So I'm kind of skipping over something. He published a book, Measure What Matters. It's a good book. I don't agree with everything in it. And in fact, a lot of us have moved past some of the ideas there. So some of the things that he puts in there look more like activities than they do outcomes. And that's okay. But there's a lot of good things in that book. And the term is beautiful. Measure what matters. So some of this is like finding what matters and focusing on what matters. And just even asking that question, what matters, is a powerful question we can ask. The funny thing is, he wasn't the first one to come out with a book. So Christina Watkey, that some of you may be familiar with, she's published a bunch of different books, and amazing books. She published Radical Focus in 2016. So in that, she talked about, she kind of relayed a story. So if you like books like The Goal, why am I forgetting his name? Eli Goldratt published a book called The Goal a long time ago. It's essentially a business novel. So it's a story that they tell, and they express some different ideas there. That's Christina's model for this book. And the first time I ever even heard about OKRs was Felipe Castro in 2016 gave a talk at the big US Agile conference in Atlanta. And I met him at lunch. We were sitting at a table, and he was just going on and on about OKRs. I'm like, I'm interested. Tell me more about this. And it's funny, I actually attended a talk of his at Agile Austin, and people had a lot of questions that weren't answered in the talk because the talk was about something else. And that's actually the reason I came up with this talk in the first place. All right, last thing on this slide. There's been an explosion of commercial products. I don't know if anybody currently is using any of those software to manage OKRs. It's generally a good thing to do. It's way better than using PowerPoint or Word or Excel or something like that. And we're using one, my client's using one called GTM Hub, so I'll give them a special shout out. They're fantastic as a partner and as a platform, so enjoying that. So if you watch this recording, that's for you. All right, so moving past this. What's an OKR? So hopefully everybody's already has this idea. So an OKR is basically a clearly defined goal, right? Hopefully it's an important goal. It's something you're willing to focus on, maybe for the next quarter, maybe for the next year. It's the answer to the question, what matters? So I might use the term goals synonymously, but goals to me are super powerful, especially when they're shared goals. If we can develop a shared goal that means something to you, to your teams, to the organization, that's a pretty powerful starting point. Way better than asking people, when is stuff going to be finished? Why are you behind? Looking at schedule and cost and those kinds of things. So an objective is a clearly defined goals, and then the key results are basically like evidence. They're measures, and we're gonna track these measurements to figure out if we're achieving the goal or not. So here's an example. So imagine that you had some kind of software, a website, an application, something, and you sell some kind of product. And so you're taking payments from people. And so maybe what's happening is you're noticing that your customers are complaining about the payment system. They're calling customer support. They're opening a bunch of tickets. They're telling you they're getting lost in this. They're having a hard time making this transaction. Maybe you have analytics on your site, and your analytics are showing that halfway through the payment process, people are dropping off, right? They're abandoning the payment. What is happening? And so you've decided, you know what? We need to address this problem. This is a real problem. And so we say, our OKR is going to be make digital payments more convenient. Well, that's great. How would we know they're more convenient? So we ask ourselves that question. And maybe the answer we come up with is, we think they could be more convenient if we have an 80% reduction in the time to complete the payment. Sounds pretty significant. And we double the number of auto pay enrollments. So the second one is basically saying, for the people that don't want to pay, they just want it to happen automatically, we'll sign them up for that. For the people that want to pay manually, we're going to make it a lot faster. Make sense? Hopefully some of your OKRs out in the wild look like this. So this objective is short, it's clear, it's memorable, right? We ought to be able to recite this, talk about this. This ought to be our focus. We should be talking about this every sprint if we're using Agile and we're using Scrum. And then this is quantifiable. There are numbers here. Double is a number. We just have to know where our baseline is. If our starting point is 100 people are enrolled and we want to double it, then we go to 200. If our starting point is 50 and we want to double it, we go to 100. So there's numbers here, right? We can measure this, we can track it. So when we talk about goals, you may be familiar with SMART goals. Anyone familiar with SMART goals? Head nodding. How much do you love SMART goals? No. So yeah, right. Hey, maybe it depends. So often SMART goals were used around people's performance. That may be the first time. Hey, Amalia, can you mute the participants unless there's a question that we need to answer? There might be a mute all button or something. So with SMART goals, you have things like specific, measurable, achievable, time bound, those kinds of things. There's an article out there that's at the very end of this whole talk that's FAST beats SMART. And I like FAST as an acronym here. I think some of SMART is still relevant, but often when we say SMART goals, we set something at the beginning and then we may or may not look at it until the end, right? And so we don't really kind of make it part of what we do. And so the F in FAST is frequently discussed. And if we're not frequently discussing what matters, then how are we going to ever achieve it? So the second part is ambitious. This part is a big deal. The coaching comes in a lot here because a lot of groups don't have psychological safety. So if you tell them to set an ambitious goal, that's going to be a challenge for them because they believe that their performance is going to be tied to this and they're going to be judged by the numbers. So we'll hit more on that later, but the goal should be somehow later to get to ambition. So we may have to address some psych safety concerns before we get there. But ambition is where growth can come from. So if we stretch ourselves, we may think in different ways. We may have to think in different ways to innovate and achieve something amazing. And then specific is straight out of SMART, right? So needs to be specific. And then transparent. So when we talk about these tools that you could use for OKRs, that really helps with the transparency because you can see alignment between different goals. You can see different goals from your peer groups. You can see an entire organization's objectives and key results and which ones tie up and which ones don't. So that transparency is huge. So just because you're using OKRs doesn't mean you're going to get transparency, but if you use the right tools, you might. So benefits of OKRs, not the most sophisticated graphics that I brought to you today, but I've kind of distilled. You're going to read lots of different benefits. You'll see things like alignment and transparency and yada, yada, yada. Those are all true. I've tried to distill them down to 3 things. Focus. Focus is a gift for a lot of organizations and a lot of teams. They're often just like, who's yelling at me at the moment? Okay, let's go do that. And they have no eye on the future and a higher level purpose. And that's a big deal. And in this age where people are leaving jobs and moving to other jobs, it sure would be nice to connect them with purpose because that's where intrinsic motivation comes from. So focus is true in pretty much any book you read, and that's meant to be a benefit of OKRs. The second one that I like to put is impact. This thing should be what matters, and if it's what matters, then we should see something happen for the customers of our products, of our company, or of our organization. This should matter, and people should go, wow, thank you for doing this at the end of it. Right? This should be a big deal working towards this OKR. And then the third thing I like to say is that the OKR should provide some insights to the people that are working on it. So some of those measures ought to be useful to the people working on it. If the numbers and the key results move, what are we learning as a result of that movement? So there should be value to the team members that work on it. And this value to the team members, we do not talk about often enough. And if you want buy-in and motivation for OKRs, you have got to talk about that piece along with the purpose. So there's a few things there. All right, so that's kind of the primer on OKRs. Are we in a good place with this? Okay, cool. Thumbs up. I see him. Omar, you got a sweet setup, dude. I'm digging the mic. I got a mic, but you can't see it. A buddy of mine shamed me into it, and he bought it for me. He shipped it. Like that's a good friend, but it looks a lot like yours. All right, coaching primer. So what is coaching? Let's see. I'm going to actually hit you with the system side first. So I'm not going to hit you with individual coaching because most of this is around groups of people. So a system. Some of you may know this. I don't know if some of y'all have taken ORSC or SC, Organizational Relationship Systems Coaching. If not, welcome to the party. System is a group of people with a common purpose or identity. At work, we have a lot of these systems. Some of these, we have systems within systems. If Amalia and I are working at the same company, we have a relationship with each other. If we're working towards the same goal, we're a system. We might also be part of Yanuks and some other people that are putting on this meetup, and now that's another system. And then we as a group are all trying to learn Agile and how to be better at OKRs and coaching. We're a bigger system. So systems are people in relationship with each other trying to accomplish something. There's some cool stuff about this. At least I geek out on it. I don't know. I think it's amazing. Each voice is a voice of the system. So if Omar says something, if Jared says something, if Dave says something, those are the people I can look at right now. If Chris,
Oh, I think we froze.
Is it us or is it Mark?
I think
it's Mark.
I think it's Mark.
Okay, probably some technical.
Yeah,
Why does it?
we'll come back. He'll manage it.
I will say I am interested in learning more about the systems coaching ORSC. I'll drop the link in the chat just so you have it. Take a look at it.
Yeah, thank you for this. No more. And to answer your question, the recording will be shared in a few days. Let's hope.
Excellent.
Actually, I'm gonna stop it.
frozen and yep, good. Thanks for re-recording. So where I'm pretty sure we stopped was like, what's a system? And so the point I was trying to make that you probably didn't hear is that each of you is a voice of the system, and that voice belongs to the system. So it doesn't belong to Omar, it doesn't belong to Amalia, it doesn't belong to Timo, it belongs to the system. So every time somebody's talking, it's a valid voice of the system. Something's trying to happen there. And so when we take that standpoint, we're not like, oh yeah, there goes Mark again saying this thing, right? We can actually work better together as a group if we take that approach. When we're coaching the system. So we're not coaching the individuals in the system, we're coaching the system itself. And we're trying to figure out, what do these people need in this moment, right? And we're coaching the relationship. We might ask what the relationship needs. And it's very important that when we're coaching people with OKRs, that we're considering this, and that these people can figure a lot of this stuff out with our help, right? We're not there to fix them. And so they have, people are amazing. They do amazing things. We've all seen that in our lives. And so we need to sort of remember that and tap into that and bring that sort of belief and position and just the way we act with them that needs to show up. So here's the thing about system: it contains people, right? Real people and relationships. And that can also be scary. We don't know what's happening for people on any given day. They could be having a rough day. They could be distracted. There could be things going on in their lives. So, it's like flammable. Anything could happen at any given time, but also people are amazing. So just, be delicate, be kind. All right, here's where I start to draw. The first time I gave this talk, somebody pointed out the little macaroni noodle on this Microsoft PowerPoint slide and started asking about it. Don't ask about that. So let me just see real quick. All right, I'm gonna try to use a pen. So I don't know if anybody's seen this before, but in ORSC, they talk about edges and they talk about intelligence. So you may have heard of emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence applies to individuals. How am I feeling in this moment? Based on how I feel, if I recognize and acknowledge the way I feel, how can I respond differently where I'm not so reactive and responsive? That's at least my interpretation of it. If we apply that to a group, there's relationship systems intelligence, which is both emotional intelligence, how am I feeling or how is this group feeling, but also social intelligence, which is, do I recognize in others how they might be feeling or responding to these things? And if we have a group of people, a system, there's a notion of edges. And edges are what happens when we are experiencing change, and change is big and scary. So there's a ton of different change models out there. You might see like, I can never pronounce this correctly, but like PROSCI, PROSCI, or you might, who's the other guy who I'm forgetting that does all the change management books, and he just had one recently that came out. Cotter, thank you. Right, so Cotter Steps for Change Management. They all share similar things in them. ORSC also has something around change, because when you're working with groups, often you're working with them because they're going through some kind of change and they need your help to make them aware of what's going on in that system. So groups have a way that they work. So they have this thing, called a primary identity. So let me just see, pen color, red, visible. Let's just see if I can start drawing. No, I cannot draw. All right, so I'm going to just use my cursor. You can see that. So we have some kind of primary identity. So as a system, you may think of yourselves in a particular way. An organization, a department, a team, they have some kind of identity. They operate in a certain way. This is who they are. If you do anything to disrupt the way that is, they're going to go through some stress. And so there's this edge, right? There's this secondary identity. If we talk to a group that's not doing Agile or that's not doing OKRs, and we start saying, here's some other ways you could work. Some of them are going to get super excited, and they're going to go from some place in this primary identity over to the second one. They're going to try out some of these things. They're going to be like, ooh, what's this like? Right? And they'll try to work in these new ways. You're also going to have some people that are going to be over here. They're like, no, this is big and scary. The last time I tried something new, it came up on my performance review, and I'm not doing this. I'm not ready for change. So some people are going to dig in, right? They're going to double down on what they do today. And so as we're noticing some of the some behaviors by people, right? This digging in, could be that people get super quiet. Could be that people, maybe they shift their focus. Maybe they walk away. Maybe they stop showing up for meetings. Any sorts of things you notice might be edge behavior. And so ORSC talks about a lot of different edge behavior you could look at. But anytime you're changing the identity, what's going to happen is different people will be at different spots. Some people will be early adopters and super excited, but the whole system at that point is in change. And the whole system is undergoing something, as well as each individual is going to be at a different spot. And so what you're trying to get them to do is get closer to the top of this triangle, where they're having to cross a shorter path to get to from their current identity to their new one. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. Maybe you do this already today with Scrum and Agile and other things. So there might be like, hey, let's just try this out and see if it works. So that'd be an example of, let's cross over here, and then we can just visit and try it out, and then maybe we come back, right? Or there might be this this idea of kissing them over the edge, which is what they talk about in ORSC, which is like, let's have a lot of positivity around this, and let's slowly move in this direction, right? And let's kind of just start to work here. Let's just do little bits at a time. But why don't we just do a sprint goal? That's kind of like an OKR anyways. Let's add some measurements with the sprint goal. That might be a way to kind of do a little bit more than what we're doing today, but we're not going all the way to OKRs, right? And then if we make it, great. If we don't, not, well, hey, what did we learn? Great. So there's little things you can do if you can be aware of the fact that people are going through change, and they're all going to have different edges. And we can recognize that as a group, as a system, and deal with that. Hey, it's normal, right? It's normal to go through this change. It's normal to feel different ways about that. You might even have them line up in a room and draw this triangle on the floor and see where people are at, and then have them talk from different positions. So that's a whole lot I'm saying on this slide, but it's a cool idea, and it's probably one of the main ones I would offer to you in being kind to people that are going through OKR change, because it's a big deal. All right, so again, with the coaching primer, we're 10:41. So given the technical hiccup, I'll probably try to go a little bit faster through some parts. So coaching in general is future focused. It's not focused on the past, unless there's something there we can tap into that you've done successfully that we could then leverage for the future. So coaching is always focused on what would an amazing future look like? What's a win look like for us? What amazing things could we accomplish, and helping people tap into that energy of shaping their own future. Our job as coaches is to help them increase their own awareness of their situation, of what's possible for them, of how they are with one another, of how they want to be with one another. Increasing awareness is one of our top goals. How do we do this? We both support and challenge. If we only challenge, hey, you're doing it all wrong. Why don't you do it this way? That's not very good, right? People need support. We talked about edges. This is hard for people. If we only support them, oh, that's okay, don't worry about it, then they're not going to really grow. So we support and we challenge, right? We let them see other things are possible. We help them see constraints that maybe they've introduced, maybe others have introduced, and see if they're willing to try to get past those in some way. And so they'll need some support to be able to do that. We have to be curious all the time. We really genuinely have to be curious. So we don't just ask questions because we have a list of questions we think we want to ask and we're supposed to do it this way. We actually have to be curious. And then when people do something, any little thing that is a move in the right direction, acknowledge it. That's awesome. This is actually a big step. This is a breakthrough, and you have to mean it, right? It has to be genuine. If it's not authentic, people will know that. And then last, offer people choice, right? I'm hearing this, this, and this through your OKR. Which of these do you want to start talking about first? Which of these is most important? So offer choice. Hopefully this is familiar for some of you. And Amalia, hopefully you'd agree that this is coaching, but if not, jump on in. And for anyone else in the call. So, when I was going through my coaching journey, I became aware of coaching competencies, and I thought they were super cool. And then I nerded out even more when Cherie Silas, who's a certified enterprise coach that was on this meetup last month, right, Amalia? Or Janut? Yep. Okay. So she's awesome. I really respect the heck out of her. She does amazing work. She's a master coach and she's a certified enterprise coach. And she started applying coaching competencies to Agile. So quick side note. So I had the good fortune of working with a group at the Scrum Alliance. I stopped doing the work, so I'm not taking credit for any of it these days, but I helped them with the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel. So they've published this on the Scrum Alliance, and they're basically doing coaching competencies for Agile coaches. All that work was definitely, from my standpoint, it was inspired by Cherie's work. And definitely what Bob Galen was involved in that too. So the two of them had a lot to do with it. And I thought, wow, those coaching competencies are really cool. What if we had something for OKRs? So I started putting some stuff together. And so let me just run through these. The first one is the coach helps the client explore the motivation for change. So if you're introducing OKRs to a group, why do they care? Right? Like you have to be able to help them realize what are some conditions that you have today that maybe could be better. Maybe there's issues about focus. Maybe there's a big initiative that this company needs to turn the ship and start heading towards that. Maybe they need to modernize. Maybe they need to, whatever it is, maybe there's some competition in the market. Maybe we have a pandemic, right? Maybe there's, who knows what happens, but there can be lots of reasons why change might be necessary. So helping people tap into what's important in their world and why this could matter to them is super important. And if you don't do this, you're not going to get very far. This is a big one. It's hard to do OKRs at all with anyone and have any success unless you start shifting towards outcomes. And different people will have a different idea of what an outcome actually is. When I think of an output, it's something like a feature, it's something like a milestone, it's a plan, it's a delivery, it's a whatever. But we need to increase their awareness and shift towards what an outcome is and what it looks like and why it matters. For anyone that's been coaching people on value, maybe you've done value points or different ways to try to prioritize, this is the magic. This is the thing that I think has been missing in Scrum and Agile for years and decades. I don't think we've done this well. So I think this is a big deal. And so have a lead in with shifting towards outcomes and tying this into good product management and customer discovery and problem solution discovery is magic. Next thing, you're going to be a hard thing to do. The coach enables the client to identify measures of success. How do we measure things? We can't measure things. Where do I get these? We're not going to get these measurements until we're done with the work, and that's not going to be for another 6 months. These are the discussions that are going to happen that you'll have to navigate. Accountability is the next one. They've got to build some habits around this. They could have a beautiful OKR around what matters and then not do anything with it afterwards. So we want to make sure that they are building some habits around this stuff. When you introduce OKRs into a system, there's going to be change. There's going to be an impact to this. It could be an impact to people's roles. It could be an impact to people's authority. It could be an impact to whatever. It could be an impact to HR in the way performance management is done. You need to be aware of this. You need to help them with this. You recognize these things as they're happening, call them out as real things, and kind of figure out what they want to do with it. And then I think this is the last one. Coach encourages the client to find opportunities for frequent learning and decisions. Good OKR should enable lots of decisions along the way. We should spread out the decision-making process, and there should be lots of insight and lots of learning that happens. So if we're super curious, we'll ask lots of questions. What are you learning? I see the data has moved. What other information do you have to share with us behind that? What caused it to move? What are you learning that's maybe not evident by the data moving? All right, so 48 minutes in. Let's talk about generating objectives. So where do objectives come from, right? So here we're looking a little bit on the shift towards outcomes, and we might be looking at the motivation for change. I'm going to offer 3 techniques. There's probably more, but these are 3 that I use all the time with people. Read the bottom part. It is quite common. We have ongoing, people are doing work, and you introduce OKRs, they're not going to stop their work. There's never a good point to just stop everything and start clean. It's not going to happen. Maybe in rare instances it will, but what will happen is you could start with things they're committed to already and work backwards. So you can ask them questions about the work as an entry point, right? And this is actually, this might be moving them along the edge, right? In a very kind and gradual way. It's incremental change. So you could ask them with some features or epics or whatever you call them, right, that they're working on, what problems are you solving? How would you know this work was successful? Do not accept an answer like we would push it to production and there would be no bugs. Like, maybe bugs are a problem, but that's not how you consider a feature a win. The feature needs to solve some specific problem, express some specific gain, generally for some human, right? Somebody that's trying to do a job. They use systems to do work or to accomplish some goal in their life. What would be a big win? So let's say we do this work, awesome. What would be amazing? What would be the best possible outcome from this work? So we start to ask some questions here. So we can kind of retrofit the OKR from the work. We can start with the work and move into the OKR. That's one strategy for finding an objective. A second strategy for finding an objective is we can take a perspective outside of the team, and we could start outside. We could look at things like voice of the customer. What are customers saying? Maybe we do surveys. Maybe there's customer visits. Maybe we observe a customer and see what challenges they have. Like, I expect UX comes into this a lot in customer interviews and continuous discovery. So the more you understand about your customers and how they use the system, the better you understand what their problems are and where their dissatisfaction is, or where there's opportunities to enable something amazing for them so that their jobs can be easier, right? Or maybe they stop doing some things that they'd rather not do. And so that's a great place to start. We talked about some of the others, right? I said there could be changes in the market or environmental changes in the world. Stakeholder needs comes up a lot. And I find a lot of teams in Scrum, product owners, product managers, whatever you want to call them, that often just receive stakeholder requests and they're just doing whatever the stakeholders ask, and whoever's screaming the loudest gets their stuff. We should definitely be aware of what stakeholders need and why, but we should ask some questions. And then we can kind of synthesize all that information to figure out, are there some themes or there's some patterns that we need to address for the business? So this outside perspective can be helpful to us to find some potential objectives. And then from an inside view, what we might look at is maybe we're doing something as an internal initiative. We're modernizing. If we're modernizing, great. Why? What do we hope gets accomplished from that? Or maybe there's some operational excellence. There's some things we just don't do well today. They should be table stakes. They should be things that we shouldn't have to think about, but we need extra focus and attention on them. So we may need to spend a quarter putting that as an objective. That could be something like maybe automating build process or some testing or something like that. It could be automating some security reports or something to that effect. It could be bringing in a new technology, who knows? So there's a lot of things you could look at within your company or outside your company to try to find objectives. And then a question I get all the time, and maybe you get this question too, and I'd be curious how you might answer it, is what's the difference between this and KPIs or this and metrics? Aren't they the same thing? And people get super confused. At least that's been my experience. So much like coaching, OKRs are future focused. They're future focused. So what are we going to do next quarter? What are we going to do the next year? And are we moving things forward in some way? And so I don't expect people to take the same objective and carry it into the next quarter. That's not a thing. What is a thing is what's most important this quarter and how would we measure that? And what might happen is over time, if we are measuring something for the first time, so we have a new objective. This is actually happening for me right now. So I'm at a client and that client is amazing. And I love this client. And we are doing OKRs there. We're doing a big rollout. And we're getting them onto this new piece of software. And we're asking ourselves this question: how do we know we're being successful rolling out OKRs? It's a good question, right? So we use OKRs for OKRs. And so when we do this, we ask ourselves, how do we measure our success? So one of those measures is what I tried to create and slightly failed and also won at the same time, which is I came up with a list of questions that I think people can answer to figure out if they have a good OKR. And I coined it the OKR quality index. And so we said, well, we're going to measure this quality index before and after working with people and see if it goes up. And so that quality index made it into this objective we had for Q2 of this year. So it made it into a quarterly objective. But guess what? In Q3, we're going to take that specific thing and move it into a KPI. We want to monitor it to make sure that it's healthy, but we're not going to stick it into our next objective. A different example, let me just give a personal example. So hopefully each of you have some goals in your life. When you have goals in your life, it is amazing, right? It is, especially when you achieve them and you work towards them, nothing's better. And I have not always done this. So doing it, not doing it is night and day. So when I woke up today, I did not say, my goal today is to have a temperature of 98.6 Fahrenheit. Sorry, I use Fahrenheit because I'm in the US, but translate that to Celsius. But if I was sick and I didn't feel well, I might feel the chills, right? I might feel cold or I might feel hot. And I might start to sweat or beat up on my forehead. And so I want to know if I'm unhealthy, but I will not make that a goal of mine. So that is the difference between a KPI, which I consider more of a health metric, temperature, versus a goal. So I've had a goal this quarter of losing some weight. I put on a ton of pandemic pounds. Not sure about the rest of y'all, but I've been sitting here at this desk for a while and not eating well. And so I've been working out. I've been cut alcohol out of my diet, all kinds of other personal things. And that's one of my goals for the quarter. And I'm measuring that. Next quarter, I don't want to have that goal. I want to have something else. So hopefully I might look and make sure I'm maintaining that, but then that becomes a KPI. So is the difference between KPIs and OKRs making a little bit of sense? Okay. All right, so I'll move on. So about an hour in, and I know we end in 30 minutes. So let me pick up the pace some. So I offered you 2 ways you might find objectives. One way was to retrofit. A second way was this outside in. A third way is my favorite, but not everybody has this. So if you are looking at some big initiative, some big future, like there's something really cool that is needing to happen, and it's way far away from where you are today. It is futuristic, it is modern. There's a vision that's out there of 2 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, something like that. Look at where you are today and figure out where would you like to be, and sit in that space. What does that future look like? Who are we trying to change the future for? What behaviors are we trying to change? What's possible in this space? So without getting too crazy on ORSC, I will draw from another thing I love about it. And one thing I love about it is we spend so much of our time working in details and facts. What's going on today? Who said what? What's the data say? We don't spend enough time dreaming. And so this gets us into dreaming. And if we as a group can come up with an amazing future, we can decide what that future looks like. If we actually leave the current way that we work with each other and talk with each other and imagine what we're trying to do for other people and how that life might be different, we might come up with some pretty cool objectives that we might map out on some kind of roadmap and figure out which one of those we want to do first. And that might make an amazing objective. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll go through this one kind of quickly. So it's important that OKRs are not top down or just bottom up, that there's actually a mix of the two. So the client I'm working with right now, we started only bottom up. And the reason we did that is because the organization is very sensitive to the fact that there's been a lot of, been a lack of empowerment on teams. So they decided to go with that first. And I was fully supportive of that and still am. But at some point, you have to tie that up to the strategy of the organization, the department, and the company. Otherwise, you're sub-optimizing for the individual teams or individual products. And if you only do the other, you're not really allowing people to kind of translate what the objective is and what it means to their specific product in their specific area. So you kind of have to work both ways on these things. And what will end up happening is if you come up with a bunch of objective ideas, you need to narrow them. Please do not have 5 objectives for the quarter. It's like if you have 5 priorities and you have no priorities. Okay, so same thing happens here, but guess what? This could be another edge. This may make people super uncomfortable to pick one of these. They may be scared out of their minds to pick them. So some options for trying to pick. If you knew you could only accomplish one, which one would it be? Which of these would pick a customer, pick a stakeholder, pick somebody other than your team would say is most important? So take somebody else's perspective. And if neither one of those 2 things get you closer, at least rank them. Do some dot voting. If you have things with the tie, break the tie by dot voting just on the things with the tie. And so you might rank them, and you might at some point suddenly ease into this edge, move along the edge and say, you know what? We're not making very good progress on number 1. Why are we working on number 5? We should probably stop that because some pressure is mounting on us to do this. I think now we're okay letting go of number 4 and number 5. I've seen that happen. That's a real thing. So ranking could be helpful. All right. So the next thing that happens, we pick an objective. How do we make a good one? Here we got to find good measures of success, and we have to have a way to evaluate what a good one looks like. So I created something, and I'll try to drop the link in here. I've got a PDF. It's not perfect. It's not beautiful, but it has descriptions of each of these things. So what I decided to do to help me and to help others was to make these 3 categories. Limiting. So notice that doesn't say awful, right? Notice that doesn't say you suck. It says limiting. Yeah, you got the muting. So limiting just says there's things about it that mean you're not going to take full advantage of what you could get out of an objective. So we'll look at examples of this, but if you put a number in the objective, that might be limiting because the numbers really go in the key results. So if you put it in the objective, what does it mean? And then if you put the how in, you're limiting the ability to come up with ideas and solutions. And creativity and innovation, you're stifling that by putting the how into the objective. Or we'll look at another one. A compound is a list of things. So sometimes the objective says we're going to do A, comma B, comma C. So where's the focus in that? So there's examples of things in an objective, characteristics, let's say, that you might observe. And when you observe them, you still need to be supportive and helpful. But you let them know we're trying to move a little more to here. Right? How might you summarize that? You know, how might we add a little focus to this? Maybe we take some of the list of things and move them into key results. And awesome looks like this. Awesome is inspirational and memorable. It's like a newspaper headline. It's something people rally around. It's super exciting. This is very hard for people to get to. If you get to this point, congratulations, you're at the top of the mountain. But if you just get them to helpful, that's pretty good. And then we have the same thing. Oh, let's look at an example real quick. So this first one, make digital payments fast, secure, and easy to sign up for while delivering with quality. Is that limiting, helpful, or awesome? You can come off mute.
It's compound.
Right, so limiting. Yep, that's right. Yep, compound, notice the comma. So there's some giveaways. Commas, the word and might show up, any of those things. All right, next one. Now, this one's a little bit tricky. You may not get this one. Up our OKR game so we can stop building the wrong things faster. What do you think? All right, I'll help you. Maybe it's awesome. So we do see the comma here. And maybe I just got comma happy when I wrote this, but I do think it's memorable. It could be inspirational if that's like a big deal to you. So it's got some criteria that seem kind of powerful. All right, one last. Deliver data-driven insights by introducing abilities to track metrics for business performance.
Oh,
Huh?
helpful.
So it's close. It's close. It can be helpful. When you see the word by, they're including the how, and they frequently do this. They put the word by.
Got it.
So possibly if we just like cut it off, they can pretty much truncate it at that point, and take that away. The how should show up in their backlog. So we'll get to that in a second. But I'd call that limiting. But it's close. It's definitely close. And I think we can acknowledge the fact that they have an idea and that that's a good thing, right? And there's lots of really cool things we can say to meet them where they are and thank them for giving us this transparency and this data. All right, so I'm going to hit key results. Same kind of thing here. You might see a list of things. That's compound again. Mostly you're going to see output. They're going to tell you they're going to deliver a feature. They're going to tell you they migrated off of a system. They're going to tell you all these kinds of things, and you're going to go, thank you. If you do that, what's going to be possible? What will be better after you do that? How would we measure that? Right? Or they might go with something really big. Well, this one is going to decrease costs. Okay, when will you see that decrease in costs? This one's going to increase revenue. Cool. Well, is that going to happen in this quarter? No, way after. Okay. This one's going to increase user satisfaction. Are there other things that could change user satisfaction other than your focus for the quarter? If that's the case, it would be hard to attribute what you're doing to a movement in that key result. So there's going to be lots of things you see there that will fall under limiting. Helpful would be things like you can measure it frequently. It's got a number, right? You can measure it. It's outcome focused. It's impactful. So this thing you're working on really matters. So stuff like that. I put baseline in awesome because it's kind of nice if you have that, but you don't have to have it. You may measure something for the first time, and the baseline doesn't have to be perfect. You can kind of start from wherever you are. Pick your best guess. Definitely ambitious is helpful. And then leading indicators tend to be more insightful. With a leading indicator, you can do some work in a sprint and see if it made a difference or not. And then you can adjust your sprint backlog accordingly. So what ends up happening with measurements is you run into a lot of limiting beliefs. So in coaching, when we coach people, they express the reasons why they think they can't do things, right? And sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not so obvious. So they're going to say things like, we cannot measure that. Okay, what's possible here, right? What's a proxy for that? What if we just did this? Kristen, I'm seeing your dog. I love it. We used to have one of those beds, and we had a dog that just ate it. But I love those beds. So, so when they say we cannot measure that, sometimes they're thinking they have to push to production, and they have to measure with real people out in production to be able to do this. Think about like usability testing in this case. Think about a controlled environment. Think about a pre-production environment. Think about a clickable mockup. There's lots of things you can borrow from UX to be able to come up with some clever measures. What's an indicator we might have success later with this? We cannot correlate the results to our work alone. So this is the example of they pick a very broad measurement and they say that's the thing. So we say, well, if you want user satisfaction to increase, what problems do you think you'd have to solve that would make a difference towards that? And how would you measure the success of solving those problems? So you can have something like a user sat, but don't make it the only measurement. Put some measurements that people think they can actually move, that they know they're the reason that it moved. Okay, here's a good one. We will not get any value until all the work is done. This is more of an Agile thing than an OKR thing, but you're going to see it. They're going to still be working with big bang releases. So now we want to go, well, could we do this in some environment? Could we invite people to click on some things? Could we run this in some test scenario? What could we do? So we got to find something to see if we're on the right track or not, because otherwise we don't get learning. We can't prove that we're doing amazing work. Here's my favorite. So we will not change what we're doing. What's the point? Like, why are we doing OKRs? We're just going to continue to march down. We're being told to work on these features. Like, what? At some point, we want to flip the script. We want to go from being order takers to problem solvers. So how do we get there? So this is one way we do it. And you as a coach, you need to be able to help them see a different future than the one they have today. And you have to acknowledge that this won't happen without their hard work and without a lot of people's hard work. And it's going to take a while. And that's okay. But if you think this is important and you like this future that we painted for you and you want to partner and work towards it, let's do this. All right. And then the last one, you're going to see people say, we have to put everything in our OKR. And it has to reflect every single piece of work we're doing, because everyone has to know how important our team is, right? We need to look good. So we need to put everything we're doing into the OKR. That's not true. You can do things in a quarter that have nothing to do with the OKR. It should really focus on what matters most. There could still be other things and they don't have to show up in the OKR. All right. So let's look at a few examples of key results, and then we're doing okay on time. I'm going to try to finish in the next 11 minutes, which may be crazy, and then just see if we can open it up. So then I'm going to have to run because I've got a meeting at 30 past the hour. So key results. Here's one. Complete a successful pilot. Implement new accounting procedures. Create a baseline to measure the time it takes to accomplish task X. What do you think? Limiting, helpful, or awesome? Don't be scared. Take a chance.
Limiting.
Why?
The second one is output, not outcome.
Yep, for sure. Yep, very good. I'll give you the rest. So the first one is an activity. Complete a pilot, create a roadmap. You'll see these. I've seen a ton of them. The third one is, you'll see this a lot too. You're gonna get into the measurement discussion. They're gonna go, you know what? We have no baseline. We're gonna take the next quarter to establish a baseline. No, no, don't do that. Instead, do this. You set what good looks like. You decide what a good target would look like. What's your standard of excellence in this area? Make it up. What would good look like? Put it on a piece of paper. That's your target. You want to get a baseline? Go for it. But that cannot be your key result. So yes, limiting. Nice job. Okay, what about this one? It's tricky.
I'll put.
Okay. All right, let's dig into this one. So this is definitely limiting.
Yeah.
So inferred in your comment was limiting. So yes, you were right by that. The first one is it's too broad. Generally, it's too broad. Maybe it could work in certain instances, like if your job is to, maybe you're trying to make training better. You're an Agile trainer and your net promoter score is low, and you know that your net promoter score is specifically based on your training alone. Maybe that works fine, but in a lot of cases, it might be too broad, and other things could influence that. Reduce headcount. This one scares the bees out of me. So people will say this. They'll go, well, the reason we're automating is to reduce headcount. Please don't say that. Nothing could destroy psychological safety more than that. Let's have a different conversation. If they're not doing this, what could they be doing instead? If people don't have to do this work, what would be possible instead? So switch that around. You'll see this, I promise you. You may have already seen it. Doesn't mean they don't still have plans, but guess what? We often have a hard time finding people, staffing, right? We have people quit on us, and suddenly we spend all our time interviewing and recruiting. You had people. They knew the system, they knew the company, they wanted to work here. Find other things. So don't have that be your key result. All right. I'm saying a lot in this. Hopefully this is helpful. Or maybe awesome, but you may find it limiting. All right, so here's one we showed earlier. Make digital payments more convenient. It's short, it's concise, it's focused. We're not saying how we're going to do this. No idea how. We do have measurements. They both have numbers, even though the word double is spelled out in words and letters. It's still a number. So let's look at this idea of having aspirational or ambitious goals. This is where I'd love to be able to draw, because I failed earlier, we don't have time for me to try this again. On the left is something called the roof shot. A roof shot is a committed goal. A roof shot is a goal that is not as hard. If you have 100% confidence you're going to achieve your key results, you have a roof shot. For some teams, that is okay. You may have teams that are brand new. They've not done any work with each other. They have a new system. You may have teams that are constantly carrying over stories from sprint to sprint. Maybe start with a committed goal for them. That's okay. Don't try to make them do an ambitious goal. That's going to destroy their confidence. Now, for other teams, they may have plateaued. They may be interested in a challenge. They may be bored out of their minds. Go for it. Put a moonshot out there. A moonshot from a confidence perspective looks like around 50%. We got a 50-50 chance. Flip a coin, whether we're going to achieve it or not. There's some stretch in that, and that's great. You just cannot hold them to the target, right? You cannot say you have to reach the full target. You have to be willing to let them reach some percentage of the target. So we can use confidence that the team assesses of any particular key result to figure out, is this aspirational or ambitious, or is it a committed goal, right? And over time, you want to move towards ambitious. So what will end up happening is the percentage of the goal you achieve. For a committed goal, you kind of do want to get to 100% of the key result, because you said it was pretty easy. You said you were pretty confident. Now, we still don't want to judge people based on this. Things can go sideways. With a moonshot, with an ambitious goal, maybe more like 70% is around the ballpark you would look for them to achieve of the key result. If they achieve more, awesome. If they achieve less, maybe you still achieved a lot, and that's okay, and you could celebrate that. All right, so strategies in coaching with OKRs. Normalize. If they show you a bunch of limiting things, don't tell them, oh, that's horrible, that's limiting. No, tell them what you're doing is completely normal. I see these things all the time. And folks, you're probably asked for these things, and these are probably part of your conversation. So normalize what they've done so far. Make it okay for them. Make them comfortable with what they put out in front of you as a draft. Or Acknowledge the helpful qualities they're bringing. Hey, this looks really important. And this is a great start. Thank you for all this information. I'm curious about this part. I'm curious about this part, right? So, and then listen to what they're saying. They might bring some stress of the pressure of the stuff they're working on with you. Listen, wow, that sounds like a big deal. Tell me about what makes that such a big deal. What if it looked like this? How might this be helpful? And then just look for some patterns. You might notice some patterns in what as you're coaching people on OKRs. So I'm going to try to finish in the next 4 minutes. So once you develop a good OKR, so we looked at strategies for finding them. We talked about what a good one might look like, and we talked about helping people with these and overcoming limiting beliefs. So now we need to do something with it. If we don't do anything with it, we haven't done much. So, okay, so you've probably seen one of these a million times. Maybe you're working with Agility Health, or maybe you're working with SAFE, or maybe, who knows, everybody's got one of these crawl, walk, run, fly. I certainly got exposed to it through Sally Alata and her stuff at Agility Health. So Sally's really cool. If you've never heard her talk, you might invite her at some point. But I like crawl, walk, run, fly because it's a very humane way to talk about progression. So I think it's awesome. So I made something that looks kind of like an eye chart. If you've ever been to, so you notice I wear glasses. So can you read this line? Can you read this line? Here it is. So what this could look like is putting something out like this it might be helpful to people to see where they are and acknowledge where they are and normalize where they are. So for instance, over here in this planning and crawl, that piece that we had that looked like a bunch of coal in a mine cart, that's retrofitting. And so from a planning perspective, you might retrofit the OKR from the work that you already committed to. That's crawl, but that's okay, it's normal. And because we know it's normal, we put it on here so people can feel okay with it right now. Later, we want to get to the point where we use the OKRs to generate the backlogs. So now they can have an eye on, well, how could we get to that? Do we want to get to that? And even if they're at crawl and planning, maybe every single sprint, they're showing progress on the OKR. They're gathering data, they're using it in their sprint reviews. It's amazing. And so they might be at run in accountability, but at crawl and planning, those two things can happen simultaneously. We can acknowledge, this is amazing. Look at, you're over here, that's good. And oh, you're over here, this is normal. So you're supporting them while challenging them with this kind of thing. Make sense? So I'm not using this for scoring. All right, so let's look at this example. So imagine that, I'm gonna hit this later. So I'm setting up an example for later. So the top portion is our key result on making digital payments more convenient. The top portion is the 80% goal, and the bottom portion is the double number of accounts in auto pay. So our starting point for this is going to be, we have 100 enrollees at the beginning of the quarter, and we're trying to get to 200. So double means go from 100 to 200. 80% reduction in time to complete payment looks like 5 minutes today. 80% reduction is down to 1 minute. So to file that away. So if I'm a team now, how do I get there? Hold on. I just realized I did something horribly wrong, but pretend you didn't see that. So there's a difference between your backlog and the OKR. So anyone seen Teresa Torres's work on continuous discovery, opportunity solution tree, any of that stuff? Yeah, so I tapped into that for this. So she talks about it. Jeff Gothelf talks about it. A bunch of people are talking about this stuff. When we have a key result, it's nice if we have multiple ideas, not just one idea. So she talks a lot about, we often only have one idea. This is getting you to think about multiple ideas. So in your backlog, you may have two things you think could reduce time to complete payment. One is add PayPal support, and a separate one is save and remember payment info. So let's place a bet. So John Cutler, if you're familiar with him, talks about placing bets. So let's place a bet on add PayPal support. So we're going to do that. And here, let's imagine we're a third of the way through our quarter. So let's imagine that's 12 weeks. That's 2 sprints, or 4 weeks if you're doing 2-week sprints. And so we're at this point in time. We have gotten from 5 minutes to 2.5 minutes. How do you feel right now if you're the team? Do you think you're going to make it down to 1 minute? Are you feeling confident? Yeah, okay. So we got one for yes. What about this one? 100 enrollees, you're up to 25 enrollees, you're a third of the way through the timeline. You got another 75 to go. Feeling good, not good, thumb up, thumb down? Okay, yeah, the waffly kind of, maybe, okay. So what if I told you that this group is 80% confident at this point? So that could be the case. They may have miserably failed to increase the number of people enrolled in autopay, but they may have learned what will work. So this learning piece is super important. And along the way, we want to not only capture the key results, but we want to capture the confidence. And I have gone over the time I told you I would, but I'm gonna just have to get through the rest. So you'll see the same thing on the other. Even though we made it halfway through, the confidence is low. We may determine to jump from 2.5 minutes to 1 minute is super hard. We don't know if we can get there. So use the two pieces of information to try to figure out what's going on. And then if that didn't work, try something else. Move on to your next backlog item. And if that did work, you don't have to do all these backlog items. You can delete them out of the backlog. It may sound crazy, but it's true. Yeah, I know, right? Shock and awe. So OKRs happen in a cycle. At the end of the cycle, how did things go? What did you learn? Where was the growth? Do some kind of like showcase, show this off, acknowledge the good work, acknowledge the failures, whatever. Ask yourself, if you went back to the beginning, how would your OKR be different? Would you have chosen a different focus, different measures? Would you have said no to some things you should have along the way? Who knows? And then look ahead, what's next? So it's kind of like a sprint review. You can have a quarterly OKR review in your department, in your area. That's kind of a showcase. All right, last one, and then it's question time. So hopefully Amalia and Janut, we've got some good questions. So OKRs are a team game. I get a lot of people from HR on these because OKRs come into play. HR is super important. I get scared when they get used for individual performance, because if I want people to achieve shared goals, if I want them to move the needle, if I want them to set something ambitious, and they're worried about their job, they're worried about how much money they're going to make, they're never, ever going to set something ambitious. They're going to be tight. They're going to be closed. They're going to show edge behavior. So that's not going to work out very well. Have conversations instead. There's other ways to help people with their own specific goals. Please try to separate those to the extent you can. So quick summary. OKRs require thoughtful change management. There's your edge picture at the bottom. Sustainability. Ask questions, ask them what they notice. We need other people to take this on beyond your time there. So see if they notice something in the OKRs. See what they're curious about. Get them to do this on their own. The sooner they don't need you, the better. Make things safe, remove evaluation, nothing punitive, not tied to compensation. Be curious, be a good listener, acknowledge, be genuine in your curiosity and your praise, your acknowledgement. Get some energy around this. Like you see my style. I get a little nutty with people. Like I go in and I want to just stir things up. They may be bored in their teams. They may need some reason to get excited. So get that going. And then create confidence, right? Acknowledge where they are, normalize where they are, acknowledge success. The more confidence they get, they're going to do amazing things because people are creative, resourceful, and hope. Thank you. And there's some links, and I'll drop another one later. And oh yeah, I should give you a Google form, but I don't have that ready. So I'm going to stop sharing at this very moment, if that's okay.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was really insightful.
You're welcome. Anybody got anything? That went surprisingly well on Hotspot.
Yeah, we could hear you well. We have as well some questions on the chat, on the Slido. Okay, this one I've answered. Follow us on LinkedIn. What if in an organization, most of the OKRs are bottom up? Does it mean that the directors and top managers do not know the direction?
So I'd say it's an opportunity for a conversation. There could be lots of reasons why that happens. you could be right. It could be the case that a bunch of people got into leadership and they've been so focused on, they have believed that so much of their focus should be on delivery and output and schedule and resources and so on, that no one's kind of taught them any other way. So that could be the case, or they just don't understand. Well, maybe they know the direction, but they don't know, like, how would I convey that? How would I communicate strategy? How would I define strategy as an OKR? So there's probably, maybe they already know it all, and maybe there's an opportunity for a higher level OKR for them to share the scoring of that strategy through an OKR. So I just say it's an opportunity for a conversation. Just go in and be curious. Hey, we have all these, but are we heading to the right place? Are we sub-optimizing? You know, what are your take on this? What's important? What should we consider as input? Just ask them some very non-threatening questions and start having a conversation with them. Does that help?
How is ORSC fitting into the Agile coaching competencies?
Now, when you say Agile coaching competencies, are you talking about the coaching growth wheel that's happening through the Scrum Alliance or something else?
So we had a little conversation when
Okay.
you were out, and we were talking about about Lisa Adkins' competency.
Okay.
Yep, and I shared a link to one of Bob Galen's blog posts talking about it in the chat. But
so I think the short answer right now is that I'm not sure where that fits in, because I haven't worked with him in a little while. At the time we were working on one of the initial competencies and we put an MVP version out. But yeah, Bob. So I don't know the answer is the short way of expressing this.
it's intriguing, and I want to investigate that. So I'm going to look more into ORSC and see how might that incorporate, because the whole systems thinking resonates very much with me, and I want to see how might we incorporate that into the coaching competency framework.
That thing is a game changer. It put me out of my comfort zone big time, and I loved it. What else? What is your list of questions for good OKRs contain? Okay. Let me get that to Amalia, and then she can share it. It's actually sitting somewhere else. It's not easy for me to access at the moment, but I can get it. Amalia, can you help keep me accountable, please?
Yeah, of course. Enjoy the OKR to KPI. Change something, then maintain it. If the objective is ambitious and you're hitting a partial key result, isn't revisiting it an option for another quarter?
Yeah, I know we're almost at time here. So I would challenge you. I mean, maybe, right? Maybe the key result comes in again, but like the objective, what matters most? Is the answer still the same? Or did you make significant progress? If you made significant progress, you might still make more progress, right? You might still do things that help with that key result, but it doesn't need to show up as part of your next quarter's OKR. So you may still try to make something better without it making into the next quarter's OKR. We don't want to do carryover. That comes up all the time. So I just challenge you on that one. You could still work on it. Doesn't need to be the main thing. It can be a secondary thing.
So we've answered the top voted question. If you want, we can stop here.
I think we should, because I got to run to a meeting, but it was so I'm so honored that you had me, and I'm so honored that so many people showed up. And I'd love to get you the feedback form if I could figure out how to do that really quickly.
We can send it afterwards.
Yeah, let me do that.
Do
me a favor. Yeah, is there where are the reactions? Give me a reaction. You could put the shocked if you didn't like it. You could put a heart if you liked it. Maybe if you do that right now. Laughing, is that good? Is it, or there's tears of yeah, really upset? Okay.
Yeah, thank you for this session. I really appreciate it. I'm actually new to Kroger, and as a Scrum Master and an Agile coach, and a big part of Kroger's transition lately has been working on aligning OKRs with program epics and team epics. So I've been a little bit clueless on how to go about it. Yeah, I've been a bit clueless on how to go about it. So this has been very beneficial, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. And we can talk over and we'll share all the links and survey and everything on LinkedIn. So guys, if
Awesome.
you follow us on LinkedIn, you'll find there everything.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for having me. All right.
Bye-bye, Mark.
Thank you. Have a great
Bye.
day and
Yeah, have a good
evening.
night.
Or
Yeah, we will. Bye.
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 Bye.